Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It is 8:02, and while people are still flowing in, I want to go ahead and get started because we don't have very long and we have a lot to talk about. Oh, I have a little back.
That was Terry Benson. Terry, would you mind muting yourself because it was the background noise? Thanks, Terry.
Thank you. Alrighty, so today we are doing our second in a three-part series for this semester where we are interviewing some of our business owner clients and some of our very long-time business owner clients like Kat. This is our answer to not being able to do live business owner forums like we typically do. So we are doing these short 30-minute interviews and enjoying learning some stuff about business owners and just having a frank conversation. So like I mentioned, today we have Kat with us. Kat was started out in her dad's company quite young, I believe, and worked her way up. And I'm going to let Joe and Kat go ahead and continue with that conversation. So Mr. Strazzeri, I'm going to turn it over to you.
It isn't like we haven't been together enough years to know my last name here.
Right. Right.
And first, I can see some of my friends' faces. So Anne, welcome back. You're back over the pond?
I am. I'm back over the pond.
Welcome back here. And Kurt, good to see you by your face, my friend, and you, Tim, as well. So I'm sitting here to your right, my left is Kat. Kat and I have known each other how many years now?
18 years.
18 years. Whoop. And Shelly, would you send somebody in? It says my microphone default changed. Make sure it's the right one. And can you hear me well, Shell?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Cool.
Name's coming in, but I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, it says it's back to the Eddie. So
Okay.
Hold on one second while Nate walks in. Yeah, it says it's back here, so we're good. So we've known each other again, how many years?
17,
18 years. And we're going to talk with Kat, give you a end of the story kind of look. Kat is in the company in a much smaller role. Kat, at some point in her career, changes that role or decides to change, takes a catapult up, eventually becomes president of the company, has somebody come at them. Actually, we'll talk about how the first sale conversation came up. During that due diligence, Kat says no. Eventually, there comes to another time that Kat says yes. Kat then sells for a number that her family's part of it, she does, and now is working with that company. We'll go through the history of that and advisors and people that she chose and people she liked and didn't like in that whole thing. So within that then, so Kat, how did you start to work for the company?
I started out when I was 18, so right out of high school. I was just looking for a summer job. Wanted to kind of get my feet wet in the business world. My father owned this company and I thought, well, that's the best way to start out. And so I started out in reception, started to familiarize myself with the processes, a lot of accounting functions, then got into accounting, started to like more strategic things, then got into development of databases and systems management. Enjoyed that, then kind of started paying attention to what we did in the business, which was that landscape. And so I wanted to start understanding the business. So then I started doing marketing and sales and really enjoyed that part.
So how many years have you been with the company up till now?
24 years.
And about half that time, you took lower level positions.
Yes.
And then suddenly there was this, wait a minute, what caused that?
It was when my father was considering a partnership, and I don't know that he really knew how much I had fallen in love with the company. Sorry.
It's okay.
And so he sought out Joe to talk about estate planning, and Joe had interviewed many of the employees in the company and talked to me, and he realized, like, you know, your daughter really loves this company. And so that's when my father and I got together, and he talked to me about what is it that you would like to do. And I said, I want to learn horticulture. I want to learn arboriculture. I want to learn the business finance. I want to learn all of the things that you do so that I can be a partner. And that's.
So then we take on the challenge of, you know, do we sell the company or not? At the time when her dad Randy came over to me, they were brought because the bank had noticed something within the design of the firms and within what another law firm had done, and they were going to remove the line of credit until this thing got fixed. So there was a threat to the line of credit, which at that time was a lot. Randy also and his wife, Kat's mom, couldn't put their thumb on X dollars. You know, I can't put my thumb on 50 grand. Over time then, the goal was to change that. So your mom's goal was, how do I do that? I remember the day that a few years later, we slid over to her what was then a passbook of $500,000 to put in her slush fund, not 50. And she looked over and said, well, this shit works. Pardon my French, everybody.
No, you're good.
And then there was challenges. So are you in a male dominated industry, a balanced industry, or female dominated industry?
It's predominantly male, like 95% male.
So what is that when you decide to grow up and you want to learn? There's a bunch of accounting firm people you got to hang out with, people like me you got to hang out with, you got to go to school for horticulture and arborist and all the rest. So that's probably the easier part or the harder part than the people part.
That was the easier part.
Why was it the easier?
Because in our industry, you know, the majority of them are they're Hispanic, Mexican, and they're, you know, it's in their culture to be male dominant. And so here's this little girl, so to speak, coming up through the ranks, and they, you know, taking direction from me was new to them. In my industry, there are very few women leaders. So it took a lot of relationship building over the course of many years for them to gain my trust, but also for me to earn their trust by learning the business and respecting what they do.
So you grew up through the company. Are there some middle-level managers that have a problem with this, or are they all supportive?
There were middle-level managers that wanted to step up more so than, well, into a higher role than myself. So there were struggles with that. But I think their drive and my drive were different. I think because I was the daughter, that was the reason they didn't want me there.
As the owner's daughter, as you were taking on different roles, were you playing commensurate with the outside market, higher than or lower than?
Was I playing with?
Were you your payroll,
Mhm.
your pay?
Mhm.
Was it more than the market would bear, less than, or about the same as you went up the ranks?
Less.
Less than. So as the owner's daughter, you get to work anywhere you're working more hours or less hours.
More hours.
So during the first dozen years, let's say, would it be fair for me to say that you were challenged on your work ethic and you had health issues and other personal issues?
100%.
And then you flip the switch and you go from having troubles making it there 40 hours a week to within a year working how much?
Almost 80.
So within 1 year changing over.
Yes.
Why so much?
I felt that I had something to prove, not just to myself, but to my father and to the business. And that's what it required of me. I couldn't have done it with less.
How did your mom and dad react the same to this change in 1 year, or did they react differently too?
My dad was happy because it meant he could do less and trust me with more. And my mom saw that her daughter wasn't spending time with her kids, so it was harder on her.
So when you first took over, you didn't have kids yet.
Correct.
As you were climbing up, you didn't have kids yet.
No.
But had you reached a VP or president's role by the time you had children?
President.
So you now had climbed your way up. You've done these ungodly number of hours, and now you've reached this level of president. And over time, you have to hit certain mile markers to not only you get paid less for the role, but get the title. But then you started to, because of those mile markers, earn equity. So at first it was small amounts of equity,
Yes.
and then finally it becomes what amount of equity?
90% on one part of the company and 50 on the other.
So part of your earn is the percentage ownership.
Yes.
So you get to about that point, you now have children. How old are the kids now?
They're 11.
So the twins
Mhm.
that you were blessed with, which was very scary
Yes.
to be able to have. And all the normal and even more than normal things that kids go through health-wise.
Mhm.
And your daughter, she had a special health condition too,
Yes.
Which was?
She had a VSD, so a hole in her heart.
hole in her heart. So lots of tax on that.
Yes.
Were you feeling complete work-life balance?
Not at that point because she required open heart surgery. So I had to take some time off to tend to her.
And how long did you take off?
About 3 months.
So, and how did the company do in those 3 months?
Not as well, but my dad stepped in because he
So
saw
he
me so
steps
long.
back in at that point,
Yes.
and then you step back. Do you feel over the years after that, you had a good work-life balance or not?
No.
No, you don't have to be. Why not?
Because I feel that in an ownership role, it's really hard to divide your time between your family and your business, especially when you have a certain number of employees. It's taxing time-wise and it's hard.
During the height of season, how many employees total?
We got
Including into your staff,
200.
200 employees. That's a decent amount to run, and you've got some middle managers.
Yeah.
And of course, Randy ends up backing away a bit.
Mhm.
So at some point, it's funny because you own 50% of one company and 90% of the other. And you and I get a call from Randy, your dad, and he says, I've hired a business broker because you're killing yourself and I'm worried about it. So I've hired a broker with the company to sell the company. By the way, dear partner who owns 90 and 50%.
Right.
Was that about what the call was like?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's how fathers can be. They tend to step in.
And I just mentioned it, but why did he go and do that? Why did he step up to that?
Because I would talk about the struggles and the day-to-day things that running a business is hard, especially in California. And we always would bounce off and go, well, why do it? Why not sell? And I'd be like, because I love it and I love the people and it's special to me. And
it's making good money at this point. You're
yeah.
getting paid, he's getting paid, and he's got a good chunk coming out.
Yeah.
And would you say that chunk he's got coming out during these years is 10 times bigger than he's ever taken?
Right.
So he's got lots of cash flow happening.
Right.
You go and you run, the company is more financially successful than it's ever been.
Correct.
Fair?
Yes.
And so, but he then sees there might be a brass ring,
Mhm.
and he looks at selling. So did you ever meet the person that he hired to do the sale before he hired him, or right after?
He hadn't even met him yet.
So not even your dad met him, he hired him, signed a contract for this thing, right?
Yes.
So an M&A guy. And now the company goes to market and they find someone.
Mhm.
And that somebody reaches in and wants to do due diligence.
Yeah.
Are they, when that person reaches and you meet them in person, or does he call?
No, we had a meeting in person the first time.
And that in-person meeting, describe it.
It felt like an interview of myself and my dad and what we experienced as a business. We went through several of the things we do in our business, especially in San Diego specifically, because they were out of a different part of California. And then more what we wanted to do after the sale.
While in the company or when you're out of the company?
It was just, if you were to sell, what would you want to do? Would you want to stay? Would you want to leave? What would you want that to look like? That was.
And this was not the person you hired to sell the company. This was the new buyer. So was the new buyer a skilled buyer? Was this part of his business?
You're talking about the first?
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah, I think he was a skilled buyer.
So he was doing roll-ups. He was buying companies like this and kind of knew what was going on. He talked a good game in the front, right?
Yes.
So then due diligence starts. What's due diligence like for the first time?
It's a mess. It's a mess. And it feels invasive and it like, there's so many ebbs and flows in business. And, when you're doing due diligence, it's like, you can't explain that on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet and, so
the person that was helping you sell the business, did they explain to you properly, do you think, what due diligence was going to look like and feel like?
no,
Not even close.
no.
Okay,
No,
so that's frustrating.
yeah,
To fast forward a bit, you don't end up selling to that buyer.
yes.
So at what part in all of that due diligence do you raise your hand and say, this is nuts?
The closer that we got to, kind of making a decision, I reverted back to, this is my company, I'm possessive of it, I love it. And something felt off, like it wasn't the right time, even though I knew that something had to give. It just didn't feel right. And I think that it has to feel right in order to make that kind of a decision.
So this person that was gonna help you sell the business was really in.
Mhm.
We had an active buyer
Mhm.
and you end up raising your hand and saying, I own 50 and I own 90 and I'm done.
Yeah,
50% of the big company, 90% of the smaller company.
yes.
What is that conversation like with your dad?
It was easy. I mean, he just wanted what was best for me, and he knew how I felt, and he's like, I will go whatever direction you want to go. And he trusted in my instincts, and we didn't sell.
Now, I'll give everybody a little background at that point. I get the phone call of, we're not gonna do this. And how do we not do this? Because we've committed to this guy to sell, or at least that part, and we've committed to this person that's helping to sell the company. Randy's a very stand-up guy, Kat's a very stand-up gal, and I don't want to injure anybody, but this isn't what we thought. The number's less than we thought. We've been asked to go down a number. I have a right to get out, but I'm not looking to completely injure anybody. How do we negotiate out of this? The guy who wants to buy the company becomes a very difficult person. The guy who's offering to help sell the company that came to your dad that got him was a junior person in a larger company that then you guys stuck me on. And they decided it was in their best interest to take a reasonable offer of cash to be done. It takes a while, and there's lots of lawyers and lots of letters and lots of meetings, but then everybody agrees that it would be easier for all people concerned because it was messy. The younger person that had convinced Randy to do this hadn't followed what he should have within his business on formalities,
Mhm.
but Randy didn't want to say cut him out completely until he thought somebody was going to hurt you guys. Then he was, look, they're not gonna be reasonable, give them nothing. And we got to get back, and then the person who was helping to sell, we gave them something to be kind.
Mhm.
But then the person that was gonna buy, we're told, take it for the full offer, or don't take it by this date.
Mhm.
They did. So then you drive back in. Did anybody in the industry, your employees, find out you were gonna sell?
No.
So that was kept secret. Why was that important to you?
Because, at this point, I had been with the company 22 years, and, you develop relationships with people, and, over the course of the years, it was always, please don't ever sell Kat, please don't ever sell Kat. And so I wanted to make absolutely sure, one, that I made the right decision with the buyer, but also that I didn't unnecessarily concern my employees with something that I wasn't, sure about myself.
What was it like being in negotiations for those kinds of numbers?
It was weird. It felt like betrayal in a way.
How so?
Because I think when it's your business, there's like, it's not about, at least for me, it was not about money. It was more about the right person that was going to take it over and lead my team the way that I would.
So then you run it for how many more years until the next time you consider sale?
Almost 2 years.
2 years more,
Mhm.
and it's my company, I'm not selling, I'm not selling, I'm not selling. And 2 years later, this idea comes up again?
Yes.
Why?
Because of my kids. In the beginning, they were young, and it was, I think as parents, sometimes we think our kids know and observe less than they do. And me being a single mom, they needed me in their life. And so between the state imposing just impossible things for us as business owners, labor hikes, material costs, insurance, all of those things, it was like, what, I'm killing myself for what? Am I gonna come out in the end anyway? But yeah, my kids are gonna be in my life forever. So I made a conscious choice that this time we'd find the right person and we'd do it.
So out of different potential buyers, you chose based on the person.
Yes.
Not just the money?
No.
Not the bigger check, but the person, why?
Because I wanted to continue working at the company, and two, I wanted someone who had a vested interest in the business, a vested interest in the industry, and had personal relationships with their employees the way that I did and the way that my father did.
So you guys were willing to sell for less money to the right person.
Correct.
Now, that's all happened. What was that due diligence like? Were you kind of prepared from the first one of what the second round was like?
I was prepared, but it was even messier only because it happened right in the middle of the onset of COVID.
Sure. And what, let's talk about some advisors. You've got a financial advisor now. Was that person involved?
Mhm.
So how were they involved?
Yeah, we're talking about Jim.
Yeah.
In terms of what way?
Was he involved in the sale time or after the sale?
After.
After the sale time.
Yeah.
So what was he talking about before the sale or after?
Just where to put money and how to put the money. And
Had you ever seen money make money before? Because now he
Yeah.
says there's a bucket
Yeah,
and it's gonna make money. Had you ever
Yeah.
watched, was that new concepts to you? Or
that was new concepts to me, that part.
So it took a few times in conversations?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And well, your CPA firm on the first sale and the second sale in between, did you feel well served by that?
Yes.
And this is the guy that helped you learn the
Yeah.
bookkeeping side, so you had a deep relationship with that
Yes.
account by then.
Yes.
And as he was doing due diligence or not?
Mhm.
And was due diligence as miserable, less miserable, or more miserable this second time?
It was miserable, but I was prepared for it. And then it was just challenging because people at banks and people at all of the facilities that we had to send stuff to were at their offices. They were,
Mhm.
everybody was remote or not at work at all.
Did due diligence ever make you want to not sell?
Yes, because it, they look at numbers and then they want to drive down the price as a result. And there is a certain amount of worth to the business, so it can come as an insult sometimes.
Now, the second time, did you let anybody in on the secret you guys were thinking about selling?
Only until we got through due diligence and we had agreed on a number, I brought in 5 key people and let them know what was going to happen. And then later,
Did they stay with the company? Did they get any financial benefit from the sale? How did that work?
they did stay with the company. We did give them a bonus. And
Right away or based on the sale happening?
based on the sale happening,
Cool. Was that weird having to talk about the accounting of doing all that and
yeah,
how big the numbers were and who gets what?
yeah,
So what's that conversation like?
with the employees.
No, with your dad and you deciding who gets how much?
Well, yeah, at this point, he's pretty removed. So, and now he wants to be cheap. So it's like, I'm sitting there like, no, I still work here and I know the value and the worth, and the business needs them to stay, whether I'm there or not, or whatever happens with me. I want the company to continue, and it's important that they were compensated appropriately.
So you're an advocate for these 5, the gang of 5.
Mhm.
On the negotiation for the sale, who leads, you or your dad?
Let my dad lead on it.
Would he say that was an easy or hard process?
I'd say he'd say it's easy because I think he thinks everything's easy.
I will say that in negotiation with the lawyers, et cetera, I had to get to him, as I do many of my business owners, and say, it's time for you to go to work.
Yeah,
I need you today.
yeah,
And we were on the phone at 10:30 at night with all the lawyers and the parties.
Yeah.
And in a screaming match where I've got my guy talking to their guy, the lawyer's saying, you're not allowed to have principals on the call together. It's immoral, it's wrong, it's malpractice. And I've got him doing his negotiating. And thank God he did, because we got to limit liability, which came in to be important later, right?
Mhm.
Because we got a suit afterwards. What for?
wage an hour.
Wage and hour lawsuit, but we had capped our liability.
Mhm,
So in our time frame,
mhm.
we're now almost past the time frame.
Yes.
And that one thing you guys are writing a check back for,
Mhm,
but we had limited it and it's lower than the check.
yes.
So limiting liability becomes really important.
Very.
What's it like working for the company after you sell it?
It's been interesting and different. I'm very much a doer, very strategic. I think a lot, I plan a lot, and it's hard to now interact with the owner when I was just owner and not want to take over what he's doing. At the same time, it's hard for me to step back and say, I'm not gonna help with that because that's what you're here for. So there's, I don't want to call it a power struggle. I think we both are just getting used to being in the same company in the same capacity in a very short period of time.
And what's it like? How has it changed your life?
I mean, I work 50 hours now, so I see my kids a lot more. Their behavior, their school, everything has gotten much better. So, and I actually have after work activities that I participate in that I wasn't before. So that's very
That's
good.
cool.
Yeah.
It did scare me when you bought handguns and took up shooting.
But that was so much fun now, and I highly recommend it.
Cool. So, what do you wish you would have known before you sold that you now know?
That the buyers are always on their best behavior and they present things, I think, almost the way that you want them to, but it's not until you get through the thick of it and the sale has gone through and now they're owner that you see the true person or manager or leader come out. And there are just things about him that I hadn't anticipated. So I had never been through a sale. So now that I have, it was a good learning experience to see what happens at the top level when these things go through.
What do you wish your advisors would have shared with you beforehand?
I don't think there's anything that you guys didn't share with us. I think we just had to experience it to fully understand.
Well, thank you. So, Shelley, I think we're almost for our time. How are we doing?
Yeah, we got about a minute left. Does anybody have questions? No?
So not hearing those, thank you all very much for coming. Kat, thanks for being
You're welcome.
here today. As you can tell over the number of years we've developed a relationship, and she's really grown the company and then ended up turning down a sale, taking a big chunk for the family and holding back, going through a lot of legal planning about that. And also now still at the company with things to think about. So I hope this gives you a little look into what owners feel like. Thank you all very much. Thanks, Shelley.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Kat.
Thank you.